Hey, what's up, everybody? Gonna do a documentary, man. This is Muscle Shoals, released in 2013. I was saying that at the top of the year, part of my resolutions is to do more documentaries and more things of that sort. Um, and so I started off a couple of interviews and things of that sort, just getting into the backstories of the music that we know and love as classic rock. And so I had a number of people who recommended Muscle Shoals over the last year or two. So here I am finally doing it, man. One person in particular I want to thank is Elaine Darsh. Elaine, thank you very much. I appreciate you not only sending me the link for this, she also sent me a note. She said, Hi Wayne, when you reacted to the documentary It Might Get Loud, you said you would like to do another one. The doc, Muscle Shoals, was mentioned several times as being one of the best music documentaries. I really think you'll like this. Aretha, Allman Brothers, Rolling Stones, Lynyrd Skynyrd, and many more are in this. It starts a little slow, but then all of the music starts and the story is fantastic. I hope you're able to do a reaction to this. I know everyone will enjoy it. Absolutely, I've been looking forward to it, Elaine. Thank you very much, man. So, let us do this, man. Muscle Shoals. Can you guys believe I've been doing this shit for 3 years? And my channel is still up? I didn't expect my channel to last more than a few months. Alright. Muscle Shoals 2013 documentary. Let's get it. Looks like one of my backgrounds. I toast your sparkle. Especially all of you who've been with me from the get. Give me a shout out. Hashtag been with you from the get.
Magic is the word that comes to mind for me when I think of Muscle Shoals. It's about alchemy. It's about turning metal, the iron in the ground, the rust into gold. You just have to listen, and you will be transported. You will be changed. You're going to hear some of the greatest voices that ever were.
I like this already.
1, 2, 3.
Let's start this show.
1, 2, 3. All right.
Baby Aretha.
Got to know how to hold it. Like on him rolling.
Peace.
Mashed potato. Do the alligator. Put your hand on your hips there. Let your backbone slip. Do the 1, 2, say. Like my little Lucy. You know I feel all right. Feel pretty good, y'all. Nah, 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 nah. Nah, 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 nah. Nah, 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 nah. Come on, y'all, let's say it one more time. Nah, 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 nah. Nah, 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 nah. Nah, 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 nah. Dancing in the alley with Long Tall Sally. Twisting with Lucy. Doing the 1, 2, say. Roll over on your back. I like it like that.
We started to hear this sound coming out. There was an amazing feel, kind of magnetic, I suppose, in a way, sound-wise. And then after a while, this word, Muscle Shoals, comes into the picture. And then you put 2 and 2 together, and that was when I said, if we get the chance, we got to go down there, you know.
This guy will never die.
People now still ask me, what is it about Muscle Shoals? It's just a little village on the Alabama border. Why does that music
One of
come
the
out of
best
there?
singers ever.
It's an enigma.
How did so much music take place in such an nondescript little town? There was just something about that place, something that still to this day nobody can
I gotta
explain.
go there now.
At different points in time on this planet, there are certain places where there is a field of energy.
My
At
favorite
this certain
song from
point in
him
time for this number of years, there was Muscle Shoals.
is The Harder They Come.
It's a unique thing. Rooms and record making like that, it doesn't happen very often. There's usually somebody like Rick Hall who's like a total maniac, you know, with the drive and the foresight to do it, you know. I mean, he's a tough guy, you know.
What a legend.
This area here is where my roots are, and it's helped me develop into whatever I am today. My father was a sawmiller, and we lived way out in the Freedom Hills, no houses, no neighbors, no kids to play with. The floor in our house was dirt. The heater was made out of an oil drum. We slept on straw beds made out of straw that we pulled up in the fields. We had no bathing facilities, no toilets, nothing. And we just kind of grew up like animals. That made me a little bitter, somewhat driven. I wanted to be special. I wanted to be somebody.
That was the burn. You don't know what, but you know why. That's all you need to start.
Slip away, yeah. Oh, I need you so.
The first record I cut in this studio was a record called Still Away by Jimmy Hughes, brand new building, and I was hoping it had the magic. I didn't know. So I brought my band in, and I went up in the control room and sat down.
Okay, all set?
I turned on the microphones and nervously hit the talkback button to the musicians and said with a slight crackle in my voice, rolling. When they kicked off Steal Away, I sat behind the console and wept. I just had huge chill bumps come up on my arms, and the hair on my back of my neck actually stood
You just
up.
knew.
And of course, this was the birth of the Muscle Shoals sound.
I've got to see you somehow. Not tomorrow, right now. I know it's late. Whoa, I can't wait. So come on and steal away.
I've heard entertainers and producers tell me that we got some kind of sound here that they can't get anywhere else. They have to come here.
It's that old, deep down into your stomach, coming up out of your gut, coming up out of your heart. That's that Muscle Shoals sound.
I gotta show this to my pops. That dude would cry. I bet you.
That sound made it through to even Ireland and Britain, and we felt the blood in that. We felt the sort of pulse of it, and we wanted some, you know?
You know.
You got to understand that Muscle Shoals had its own kind of R&B, different from Memphis, different from Detroit, different from New York, different from LA. How did it happen in this little town of 8,000 people? This started this whole style of music.
It always seems to come out of the river. You know, even in Liverpool, you know, the Mersey sound. And then, of course, Mississippi. And here you have the Tennessee River. It's like the songs come out of the mud.
Ferry across the Mersey. Rest in peace, Jerry. Jerry Marsden.
You're at a place called Ishite. It means it's a special place, a holy place. It's a place of music, and it's a place of people. I've been working on it for 32 years. There's over 8 million pounds of stones here. It's a memorial to my great-great-grandmother. She was an American Indian, and her people were Iuchi. My grandmother's people called this river that we call the Tennessee today, they called it Nunase, the river that sings. They believed a young woman lived in the river, sang songs to them, and protected them. In the year 1839, my great-great-grandmother was removed from right here in Muscle Shoals. She was taken to the Indian Nations, what is now present-day Muskogee, Oklahoma. When grandmother got out there to Oklahoma, she said there were no songs. She went and listened to all the streams she could find, and there were no songs. They couldn't sing, they couldn't dance, they couldn't hold their ceremonies. And they got to be very sad people. So she started to come back home. She walked all the way back. It took her roughly 5 years.
Wow.
She had to come back to this river, the river that sings. The great dams have softened the woman in the river's songs. But if you go to very quiet places and listen, you can still hear her songs. I know. I hear her songs nearly every day.
When I was a young man starting out in the music business, Billy Sherrill and I, who were writing partners, got a phone call from a guy that wanted to start a publishing company with us and had the sum of $500 to spend on us, which we thought was a gold mine. So Tom Stafford was a dream come true. We went in business and we had a little bitty studio over Tom's father's drugstore. We got a few cuts, made a few bucks, and one day I was called into a meeting with Billy and Tom, and they advised me that they were not happy with the way things were going and thought that I was a little too much of a workaholic. And said that they wanted to have fun while they were having hit records, and that I was just too adamant and too strong-willed and too pushy, so they decided to let me go. So I obviously went home, began to lick my wounds, and was very bitter. During this time, I worked at a place called Reynolds Metals Company in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and I married my first wife, Faye Marie, there. She and I had been married about 18 months, and we went to Hamilton to see Benny Martin in concert. It was about sundown, and I met a car who was traveling very fast. I swerved to go around that car. I hit some loose gravels on the side of the road and went into a spin, a tailspin. The car turned over end a couple of 3 times and landed on its top, and didn't know if she was out or in, but couldn't find her in the car. It was total darkness. I began to yell for her and couldn't hear any noise, except I could hear gasoline running out of the gas tank into the car somewhere. And I thought, of course, it's going to be my death because the car is going to catch fire and I can't get out. I got out of the car and searched around in kudzu vines up to here. Finally, some people stopped with a flashlight and we found her. I nursed her on the way to Hamilton Hospital. About 2 o'clock in the morning, the doctor came to me and said, "Your wife has passed on."
Wow, man.
And of course, I freaked out. I became a drunk, a vagabond, a tramp.
Damn.
That changed my whole life. It was hard times, and all I had to cling to was my music. I slept in my car, I ate in my car, and I wrote songs in my car. But I continued playing music, and it was the only love I had at that time, and so I joined a little local band in Hamilton. From that time on, for 5 years, I wrote songs, played music, and chased the women.
Somebody long me down. I need to call my old time. Used to be.
All of this gravitated towards what am I going to do the rest of my life, and I decided to come back to Muscle Shoals, but this time I came back with a vengeance. I came back with a determination that I was going to kick some ass and take some names, and I was going to make it in the music business.
Diamond in the rough.
And so I've set up shop in a little candy and tobacco warehouse. I closed the doors, I hid my car. I didn't talk to girls, I didn't make dates, I didn't do anything except write songs, and I was totally obsessed with the business. And so shortly after that, I ran into Arthur Alexander, who was a local bellhop at the Sheffield Hotel. And he played me a song and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think it's a hit." So he said, "What are we going to do about it?" And I said, "We're going to cut it." And he said, "When?" I said, "Tomorrow." I brought my band in. Norbert Putnam, David Briggs, Jerry Carrigan, Peanut Montgomery, and Terry Thompson were the first rhythm section to be in the studio and to cut a hit record.
Now, you got to realize Rick Hall is this older man. We're all 18, 19 years old. And Rick's, what, 28, 29? 29. He had the vision for the recording. Rick made records with a group of teenage kids, okay, that became hit records, world-class records.
You asked me to give up the hand of the girl I love. You tell me I'm not the man she's worthy of.
The very first record, You Better Move On, by Arthur Alexander, that I produced, or had anything to do with, was a hit. Not the second or third, but the first session we cut was a hit record.
I know Rick was determined to cut that hit, and he did it. But if he hadn't, I'm of the opinion that none of this Muscle Shoals movement would have ever happened.
That's up to her. Yes, and the Lord above. You better move on.
The rest of the world started looking at Muscle Shoals.
Thank you very much. We're going to do our slow one now. It's called You Better Move On.
It was the only thing we did like that. And the girls really adored this song. It was a big hit for us in England. It was like a #1 record.
You asked me to give up the hand of the girl I love.
I think the Beatles beat us to Arthur Alexander by like a couple of weeks. You know, they cut Anna, and I think we cut Better Move On maybe a month later. It was a love of Arthur Alexander, you know.
I love the contrast between the Stones and the Beatles. It's like two sides of the same coin.
At that time, we had no idea where this was recorded. But it's interesting to know, one of the first things that we cut was a Muscle Shoals production.
This original Muscle Shoals rhythm section opened for the Beatles in 1964, their first American concert. And of course, a year later, in '65, we all go to Nashville.
These guys went on to become great pickers and producers and learn from experience here at Fame, man, we can do it.
When they left, there was nobody else. We were the only game in town for him to get.
They took the ball that we started rolling, and they rolled it and made it bigger.
Individually, I never really thought we were great players, but together we were great players. We had the magic together.
We liked playing funky. All funky was is that we didn't know how to make it smooth. We're rock and roll players, okay?
You just didn't expect them to be as funky or as greasy as they were.
I know a place. Ain't nobody.
The grooves that we set up came from rhythm and blues music. I remember when Paul Simon called Stax Records, talked to Al Bell, and said, hey, man, I want those same black players that played on I'll Take You There. He said, that can happen, but these guys are mighty pale.
A lot of people could not believe that my whole band was white guys that played behind me.
People have arrived at Muscle Shoals expecting to meet these black dudes, and they're a bunch of white guys that look like they worked in the supermarket around the corner.
Muscle Shoals rhythm section, David Hood, bass player.
Jimmy Johnson, guitar.
Roger Hawkins, drums.
Barry Beckett, keyboard player.
Later on became known as the Swampers.
A strong rhythm section made the difference when you went in the studio every day with the same pickers and the same players,
like the White
and they
Funk
became
Brothers.
a team, and it was hard to beat that. We began to bring in songwriters, musicians, anybody that wanted to be in the music business.
I guess during high school, I started going over to Fame Studio. That was like a melting pot for songwriters, musicians. I was, as a teenager, really impressed with all that.
I came up here and I'm just a kid, really. And all of these people here were kids too. I mean, nobody knew anything.
It's good company.
We're just doing our best to learn how to make records and learn how to write songs and learn how to play music.
Most of these guys around here, including myself, are country people. We come from the country. Arthur Alexander, Jimmy Hughes, they were the pioneers as far as the artist goes down here. Percy, Sledge. These are just local people.
I'm from a small town called Leeton, right outside of Muscle Shoals. I was a little guy working in the field, chopping cotton, singing to the older people in the field that always said that one day my voice would be heard all over the world, but I never thought that would happen.
Percy worked at the local hospital.
I was an orderly working with the sick people. I'd sing a song for them, you know, and they go to sleep. I got such a big kick out of that, you know, and I could see my patient laying up there smiling, you know, and feeling better. So one day I was invited to sing at the Elks Club here in Sheffield. And just so happened Quinn Ivy was a disc jockey at WLAY. And he heard me sing this song, and he loved the melody and the feel. He said, Percy Sledge, have you ever been interested in cutting a record?
I remember the day I got the call, will you come do keyboards on this recording session? It'll be the first recording this artist has ever done.
When I came into the studio, I was shaking like a leaf. I was scared.
Sometimes you only need one song.
Every time that he sang the song, he had different levels for different parts of the song. And everything had to be in your wrist, bringing the level up and down.
All I had was a voice. I didn't know anything about no singing, you know.
Somehow, I got one down, and Percy was on time with me with a great vocal.
So all this was just so new to me, and these guys made me feel like, hey, man, so you can do it, you got it, you know? I used to call them my family, Donna Thatcher, all of them, you know.
My first wonderful experience was singing on When a Man Loves a Woman with Percy Sledge, and you never know when you're making history.
Quinn called me one Sunday afternoon and said, do you know of a place we can get a deal? And I said, I think so. And I picked up the phone and called Jerry Wexler in New York.
Jerry Wexler was probably the biggest record company guru in the world.
It was a man named Rick Hall who had a studio in Muscle Shoals.
I said, you told me if I heard something I thought was a big hit, to call you, and I'm calling you.
Play a little bit of this thing.
And I heard some music coming from there, and it was fabulous.
What do you think?
We pressed and distributed the record, and that was a big hit.
That began a great relationship between Jerry Wexler, Atlantic Records, and Rick Hall. And of course, the record's still one of the most classic records in the business.
Same melody that I sang when I was in the field. I just wails out in the woods and let the echo come back to me.
I, George C. Wallace, is governor of the...
During that era of recording basically all black acts, you got to remember that George Wallace was standing in the schoolhouse door at the University of Alabama,
survived that,
making sure that no black people came to school
assassination
there.
attempt.
And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
This was a politics that could not see past the color of your skin.
It's the kind of thing that I know people of this era, they wouldn't want to believe what it used to be.
The stroke
I
of
think
man.
of all the times when we used to take a break from the studio to go out and
My
eat.
favorite song from
I was
Clarence
somewhat
is
frightened from time
Patches.
to time when we'd go and buy dinner for half a dozen black people.
That's where you saw, like, what are y'all doing sitting there? Even though the civil rights movement was already in effect, it still hadn't dawned on people that this is the new era.
Hey, we've come a long way in a very short period of time. Let's be proud. Not our finest hour, no, but we've come a long way. Cheers to that. No shame.
When I was a young boy, it was always, if I met a white boy, I had to say, this is Mr. Robert or Mr. Jimmy. But in the studio, we got away from that. It was Jimmy, it was Robert, it was Clarence, you know.
Go that way. Or something like, I'm done. Do that one more time.
You just worked together. You
My
never
dad
thought
said
about who was white and who
there
was
was none
black.
of that shit when he went to all of the different
You
outdoor
thought
venues
about the common thing, and it was the
and saw
music.
the Dead and Dylan.
We were colorblind. There was never any situation came up in the studio here ever about you're black and I'm white.
You think about the South. They didn't believe that black and white people could live together. And here are vinyl records that prove that not only can they
Now
live
our
together,
kids are
you might
getting
know
married.
who's black and who's white.
Some crazy shit just a few short decades later.
At the time, this was revolutionary stuff.
Music played a big part in changing the thoughts of people, especially in the South, about race. By us being in Muscle Shoals and putting music together, I think it went a long ways to help people understand that we all were just humans.
My stock went sky high
That's the
with
magic
Wexler
of
after
music.
the Percy Sledge single went #1 worldwide. And he said, Rick, I've had a little bit of a dispute with Jim Stewart at Stax, and he don't want me to cut any more records over at his studio.
The welcoming mat for me at Memphis was pulled. So I got the idea of calling Rick Hall and say, hey, can I bring Wilson Pickett down here and make some records with you guys? Which we did.
I gets off the plane, Southern Airlines, and here this long, tall, white man, and we call him Peckerwoods.
I met Wilson Pickett, picked him up at the airport. He looked like, to me, a dangerous man.
He walked up like he'd known me for 500 years. Hey, Wilson, come on, we're gonna cut some funky records. Boy, we're gonna really cut some records. Come on, Wilson. Come on. I said, wait, I'm nervous, you know what I mean? Now, what does white man know about producing a Wilson Pickett?
And on the way to the studio, I'd look at him and he'd look at me, and I could see it in his eyes. He was thinking, what am I doing with this cracker down here in Alabama?
We went through the cotton patch, people still picking cotton. I said, is that what I think it is? Yeah, Wilson, they still picking cotton down here. You could see a studio from the cotton patch.
Pickett had a very quick temper.
I was there to make it work, period. You know what I mean?
On the session, if he didn't like what was going on and didn't like the attitude, he's just liable to whoop the drummer. Say, come outside, I'm gonna beat your ass.
I was nervous. I was sitting behind the drums, and I was getting things to get like drummers do and checking things.
Our band was super nervous the first time we worked for Jerry Wexler. We had this feeling that if we couldn't play what he asked us to play, we'd probably be fired on the spot.
I was apprehensive and very leery because it was entirely different from what we had been doing in New York, which was recording with written arrangements, arrangers, and studio players who read the charts.
We would get in the studio and we would add a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then we'd go to lunch, come back, and we didn't like that, take it away, then you know, all that kind of stuff. We would sit there and we'd make that record together. All right. Those guys would sit there in that studio and just find the groove, you know? And I'd be right there with them, singing along, and we'd all work it out together. Rick Hall, he stuck there every minute. Rick Hall was his own engineer. He built the studio. He knew all the electric wiring in there. And that drummer they had was fantastic. He was a funky drummer, but he wasn't wearing himself out all over the place, you know. He was just
in the
there.
moment. Let's pause for a sec, y'all. I got a lot of loud noise coming out, lots of mechanical noise. It's gonna interrupt this So hang on a sec, I gotta close the window. Okay, y'all, sorry about that, man. They got their leaf blowers outside. I live in a condo complex and they all start up their leaf blowers at like 6 in the morning. Some crazy shit. Let's continue with this, man. Muscle Shoals, 2013. Let's get it.
Written arrangements, arrangers, and studio players who read the charts.
We would get in the studio and we would add a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then we'd go to lunch, come back, and we didn't like that, take it away, then you know, all that kind of stuff. We would sit there and we'd make that record together. All right. Those guys would sit there in that studio and just find the groove, you know? And I'd be right there with them singing along.
Wilson looks great.
We'd all work it out together. Rick Hall, he stuck there every minute. Rick Hall was his own engineer. He built the studio. He knew all the electric wiring in there. And that drummer they had was fantastic. He was a funky drummer, but he wasn't wearing himself out all over the place, you know. He was just there. We was cooking away on the thing, and Wexler was in the control room. He said, "Hey, baby, it's working. Hey, baby, it's funky."
Rick Hall had a rhythm section of exceptional players.
Those drums are funky as hell.
This was very inspirational to me.
Jerry came out at the end of the first day. We had just cut Land of 1,000 Dances. And he walks out in front of Roger, and Roger's ears had never heard anything like this.
He said, "Roger." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Roger, you're a great drummer." And all of a sudden, I just kind of relaxed and became a great drummer, just like he said I was.
After my first night in that studio with them, I was convinced that that could be a recording home for me. Mustang Sally. We cut Mustang Sally, all that funky Broadway, the land of 1,000 whole dances. Boy, and he stood up chewing it. How you like that, Will? Oh, yeah.
Pickett and I were soul brothers. We were.
We was nitty-gritty, right down in the cold nitty-gritty.
Everything was just roses with me with Jerry Wexler.
Jerry took a liking to us from the very beginning.
There's just something that leaps out of a record. I call it the sonority of the record. It's the way the sound of the record impacts on the ear instantly. And to me, that's the magic ingredient in a phonograph record.
So grabbing.
The Rolling Stones had it, the Beatles had it, and they had it. And so from then on, Muscle Shoals became the place that I prefer to go and love to go.
Soul grabbing signature sound. These great acts, they all have that.
I grew up north of Florence. It really wasn't a town, just a dirt road. The only way to get to Florence at that time, we had no car. My mom and I would walk from the dirt road down to the highway to catch a bus to go into Florence, which was 5 miles away.
I was born in Sheffield, Alabama, and graduated from Sheffield High School. While in high school, I would see Hollis Dixon in the Keynotes. It was the first rock and roll band around here. And I just fell in love with that. I thought, I've got to learn how to do that.
You got Roger Hawkins in a group called the Del Reys. Jimmy Johnson was playing guitar. I remember hearing the Del Reys when I was going to the University of Alabama. And I remember I could not get into the fraternity house. So I had to stay outside and listen to it. I mean, the ground was rumbling. Okay, it was such a great band.
We met each other when we started playing at the Tuscumbia National Guard Armory at the Square Dance. Half the night was rock and roll, and then after that it was all square dance. We made $10 each for that.
After Wilson Pickett, I became Jerry's right-hand man. And so he said, I'm thinking about signing a new act. Her name is Aretha Franklin. She's on CBS Records, and it's not happening. They can't sell records on her.
I'm only one step ahead of heartbreak.
I'd heard her real smooth records on Columbia. You couldn't really get your teeth into them.
These lush arrangements.
I Say a Little Prayer was my favorite song from her.
No one knew
smooth
what to do. That she had this great
beginning
voice.
days.
Lots of people have a great voice.
I've still got to find out who and what I really am. I don't know yet. I'm trying to find the answer.
You already
I
had
wasn't
it.
exactly hoping that she wouldn't have any hits on Columbia Records. But
That's
the
a
way
nice
it
shot
went,
of
they
her.
dropped her after 5 years. A week later, we were in my office in New York. We signed her up.
He said, you know, I've got this great little studio down in Muscle Shoals, and these cats are really greasy. You're gonna love it.
She walks in, right over there. And she's got this aura around her, pretty thick. I mean, the girl was special. I remember watching the guys, being good Southern boys, they'd carry on with anything except looking or dealing with her. So she walked right over to the piano. She sat there a moment, and then she just hit this unknown chord, I would say. Didn't anybody have to say we're about to cut?
We did what we called head sessions at that time, and there was no real music written for it. The musicians would just listen to what it was I was doing, and then they would decide what they were going to do around that.
I think we heard a little demo of this song, Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You.
To me, it sounded pretty much like junk. I'm thinking, that's a song they're gonna cut? There was discussions, Jerry Wexler and Rick.
There was a little confusion and there was a little turmoil. Everybody was a little uptight.
We can't find a groove, a beat, a place to start.
They were just had all these gears working, but finally it just came to a and suddenly it was really quiet. They had a song, they had an artist, but nobody knew what to do.
That's what you needed.
Not even all these geniuses. But out of that quietness came Spooner with, and I said, hey, Spooner's got it. That's it. Aretha jumped right on it.
You're no good, heartbreaker. You're a liar and you're
See what I'm talking about?
It was cut within 15 to 20 minutes. You didn't have to ask.
The story
what do you
behind
think?
the music.
Everybody knew it was a hit.
I think everything came together for Aretha in Muscle Shoals.
They got Aretha to record a much more funky kind of
Soulful.
style in Muscle Shoals. It was really the essence of her.
Coming to Muscle Shoals was the turning point. That's where I recorded I Never Loved a Man, which became my first million-selling record. So absolutely, it was a milestone and the turning point in my career.
We cut I Never Loved a Man, which people to this day still regard as being maybe her most soulful and really funkiest record.
It's my mom's favorite song from her.
That's one of those songs, the ones that give you the chills, the ones that give you the goosebumps, the ones that you like, I wish I sang a record like that.
We had a whole week planned to cut tracks a whole week. But at the end of the session, we found out that there was a problem.
There was a ruckus. One of the horn players and Aretha's then husband, Ted White, got into it.
this new horn player started saying things like, "Aretha, baby." And it was just enough that Ted White got offended.
They'd been drinking from the same jug, and now this camaraderie and great palship turned into some kind of alcoholic hostility.
Ted comes into the control room with Wexler and I and says, I want the trumpet player fired. I looked at Wexler and said, what do you think? He said, go fire him. So I went and fired him.
That later caused a big argument and caused the session to end.
I got a hold of the bottle of vodka and I took three drinks of it. And I said, Wex, I'm going to go over to the hotel and get with Ted and them and we'll work this thing out. He said, no, I don't want you to go. And I said, yeah, well, I'm not going to start any trouble. I said, I'll go over and work it out. We'll become buddies and I'll work everything out. He said, no, Rick, don't go. Please don't go. So anyhow, I'd had a couple more drinks and I went over there. Banged on Ted and Aretha's door, and Ted came to the door and he started pointing his finger in my face and so forth. And well, we fought and fought and fought. He was trying to throw me over the balcony and I was trying to throw him. It was the downtown and we was up on about the 4th floor.
My former husband never came back that night, and I decided that I was leaving. I'd never been to Muscle Shoals before or away from home, really, by myself, and so I just said, I'm going to the airport. And when I got to the airport, I saw him with the bell captain. I said, whoa, this son of a gun was going to leave me down here. Unbelievable.
They left town the next day, early. So Wexler came and said to me, I will never set foot in this studio as long as I live again. I will bury you. And I said, you can't bury me. He said, why can't I? I said, because you're too old. I'll be around after you're gone.
So the next day I showed up and on the board it says session canceled. And I thought, oh man, it's over, we've had it. But a few days later, Jerry Wexler calls and asks if we can go to New York and finish the album there.
He didn't have to ask us twice. On that album was R-E-S-P-E-C-T, Respect.
What you want, baby, I got.
To be a part of something like that is unbelievable. It was milestone stuff.
The stories behind the music. This is the shit.
The Swampers went on and recorded with Aretha on many hit records.
Sweet, Sweet Baby, Natural Woman, Think, The House That Jack Built, Call Me, Do Right Woman, Do Right Man, Chain of Fools, and so
Think doesn't get enough of the spotlight of Aretha music.
Of course, it worked out incredibly. And it's been one of the anomalies, I think, of the era that Aretha's greatest work came with a studio full of Caucasian musicians. How do you figure it? This is the Queen of Soul, acknowledged. Here we have Roger Hawkins and David Hood, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Beckett, Spooner Oldham, coming out with probably the deepest and most intense R&B of the era.
Absolutely. Just goes to show. Music builds bridges, baby.
So after my dispute with Wexler, he took Aretha away. And on my part, I felt like I really screwed up. So I went to Chicago and I spoke to Lynyrd Chess because he said, I wonder what I got to do to get you to do some sides for Chess Records. I said, who do you want me to do? He said, I'd like you to do Etta James.
When I looked at him, I said, this guy's Rick Hall, so this is Fame Recording Studios, and I'm in Alabama, and now this is gonna be, you know, the real thing here. I'm gonna get some of this Alabama mud and, you know, all of that kind of stuff.
Etta James is probably one of my favorite chicks of all time. Lynyrd said, you know, Rick, I built my company on her back. When you think she's singing as good as she can sing, if you'll kick her ass and wind her up, said she can rattle the shingles on this studio.
You thought you hadn't found a good girl, one to love you and give you the world.
Rick Hall was actually the first white man that I had seen that had that kind of soul, that was an engineer and was soulful, you know.
We recorded a Clarence Carter song. With Clarence, it was Tell Daddy, but with Etta, it was Tell Mama.
She didn't want to do the song because I think she had a problem with somebody suggesting to her that she was going to take care of some man.
I would be so hard-headed and, you know, just don't tell me nothing, you know.
She had a temper like a lion. I said, if you'll do it for an hour, if it's not happening, we'll garbage it. We'll throw it in the garbage.
I finally realized everything that he used to badger me about, he was always right.
Tell Mama all about it. Tell Mama what you need. Tell Mama.
And of course, the record was to become a big, big hit on her.
Everybody said that that song raised her from the grave, you know, and brought her back to prominence. Each time a person went to Muscle Shoals, they came out of there with a hit record. You had to know that there was something magic in Muscle Shoals.
Look at Rick, what Rick had to sacrifice in order to be reborn. I'm thinking about the sacrifice that he paid to create this.
The spirit of Muscle Shoals permeates not only the city itself physically, but I think the people who came through there. The place has a soul.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
W.C. Handy was from the Muscle Shoals area, and everyone that knows about the blues is familiar with W.C. Handy.
He's one of the great popularizers of the blues. Before it was a kind of gut bucket music that didn't have a lot of respect, he kind of legitimized the music.
All the bands were playing the same thing, but no one had written it down.
Wasn't the handy
He
man.
was the first one to write it down. That's made him the father of the blues and made this area famous.
Sam Phillips was also from the Muscle Shoals area, and Sam was kind of my tutor, and I kind of looked upon him as being the guy I wanted to be.
Sam Phillips came out of there. I mean, didn't he invent rock and roll or something?
My dad, Sam Phillips, was the first to record Elvis, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, Roy Orbison. But a lot of people don't realize that he only worked specifically with black artists in the very beginning.
Well, the basic feeling I had for a black artist, of course, originated when I was very young on a farm in Alabama. I felt a certain spirituality about the black man's music, and hearing it in the cotton fields, that made one hell of an impression on me.
Mr. Phillips heard people singing in fields and heard trains rumbling through and the river roaring around the bend down here in the Shoals. There's a subconscious rhythm that gets in your head. There's like a groove, there's a pocket that sticks in your gut. It's connected all of us.
Helen Keller was from Muscle Shoals. And it was just always amazing to me the things she was able to accomplish being blind and deaf.
Right.
Helen Keller was deaf, completely mute, completely blind, and her only way of communicating with the world is with gestures. You can still go to her house and see the well where she learned her first word, which was water.
There's obviously an incredible connection to water here. So you can see why that would be the first word that Helen Keller learned, water. There's such a power in this place, and you feel it whether you can hear it and see it or not.
I'm a great believer that landscape is always very important in music, and somehow music can reflect landscapes.
Something told me it was over. When I saw you and her talking.
People ask me always, what is the Muscle Shoals sound?
You had a lot of black musicians playing with a lot of white musicians, and we all got a different way of playing, but it blends so well together.
There was this coming together of styles.
And there's some hillbilly background there. There's some black music. We were open-minded to be any genre.
I would rather go blind, boy, than to see you walk away from me, child.
The Muscle Shoals sound, I think, has a very heavy bass and drum featured in the sound. That was what sounded right to us. Turn up the bass, turn up the drums.
This was, at the time, cutting-edge technology. The fact that a drum kit could be close-mic'd meant that they could turn up the bass drum. That's what created that blacker sound, that African sound, that allowed you to be sweet on the topsoil, but knowing that deep down in the ground there was some fierceness.
I was just sitting there thinking of your kiss and your warm embrace. Yeah. Woo! Come on, man. Woo! Woo!
When I was a young boy, my mother was washing clothes out in the yard with a wash pot. And the pot had boiling hot water in it. My brother, who was 3 years old, was playing in the backyard with my first cousin, and they were pulling on a stick. My brother ran backwards and fell into the pot of scalding water. So my mother took him in her arms and went screaming across the field, hunting my father. He came running, and they took him to the doctor in Red Bay, Alabama. And they took his clothes off, and all of his skin came off inside of his clothes. He died 3 days later. That was the start of the decline between my father's and my mother's relationship. He kind of blamed her for the accident, and she probably blamed him for not being at home.
Very similar to how Ray Charles' younger
She
brother,
left us
George,
and
died.
said, I'll never live with you again, and forget about me. She moved in with Aunt S, who ran a red light district. So my father asked people what she was doing up here. And they said, well, Herman, you know what the other girls are doing? And he said, yes, I do. And they said, Dolly's doing the same thing. It was earth-shattering for me.
When you lose your soul, you lose your way.
Even after all these years and being away from her and not spending much time with her in my life, not a day goes by that I don't really miss my mother. More acoustic guitar. There's too much happening. I just need the intro, and everybody needs to cool it a little bit and back off. If everybody comes in from the top, where are you going to go from there? If you get a chance or two to cut a record, produce a record, and get a budget to do it with, and you don't have a hit, you will never get another call. So I was always aware of that. I always felt that every record, my life depended on it. Time is like, time. It's like you're whispering that part.
All right, y'all can always do mine over.
I know we can, honey, but I like to do it this way.
All right, Rick is so meticulous. Oh, it's just a joy and pain to work with Rick. Because he won't stop until he gets what he wants. If it takes 3 days on one song, Rick's gonna get what he wants.
We're doing just what we just got through doing. We're doing the same thing over again, and I just want to perfect it a little better. We've changed a couple of things, so you gotta listen.
Rick was a very demanding boss. He would take 1,000 takes of something till he was satisfied, and sometimes he would not know what he was looking for, but he would keep working until he got it.
I'm talking about it's too bright.
Oh, okay, I thought you wanted the bright.
Well, I did want it bright until I heard it. Now, when you hear it with a track, it's a whole different thing. I mean, you gotta listen to it in perspective.
That was very frustrating and hard on the musicians because you think, well, I already did that.
Nobody ever worked in the music business without getting their ass kicked. If they did, they're on the street somewhere pushing a wheelbarrow of concrete.
He was kind of like a taskmaster. And I don't fault him for that because he is an imperfect perfectionist. That's what made him great, though.
Great way to describe that.
Forgive me, darling. I ain't easy to love.
Spiritual tuning, that's what it is. When you all come into sync all at the same time. He's got a radar for that. Oh, look at my man.
Duane Allman, of course, came into Muscle Shoals and wanted a gig. So he put up his pup tent on my parking lot at the studio. And finally, I gave him his shot.
When Duane showed up, he was probably one of the first guys with long hair and kind of the hippie look. But what really made him stand out was he was a wonderful guitar player.
I had never heard a slide guitar played like Duane Allman could play it.
Duane had been in Los Angeles, had a group called the Hourglass with his brother Greg.
They signed us on this big contract, and they wouldn't let us play anywhere. I think the first year we were there, we played like 3 concerts. So he finally said, hey, I've had it with this place, I'm leaving. And he wound up in Muscle Shoals. But right before he left, I talked him into going horseback riding with me because we weren't doing anything. Finally went out there and I said, listen, when we go from the barn out to the field, we got to cross a paved road. I said, the horse is shod. It's what? It's got shoes on, you know? And if he slips, he'll bust both of his butts, so don't give him any reins. And guess what happened? And he hit right here. He couldn't play. And he wouldn't let me in his house for about 6 weeks, and I mean, that was terrible, because I mean, you know, growing up without a father, he was somewhat of a father figure to me, even though he was only a year and 18 days older. So it came his birthday, November the 20th, and I went out and bought the first Taj Mahal record and a bottle of Chlorocidin pills. He had his cold, he had his arm in a sling, he was pissed off at the world, and I did what I could do. I put it down in front of his door, had it wrapped up and everything, and I knocked on the door and ran.
Scared of his big brother. Love that.
I guess about 2.5 hours later, phone rings, and it's him. He says, "Get over here, Babe Ruth, quick." And Babe Ruth, he called me that baby brother, very endearing handle he had for me. He said, "Man, check this out." He'd been listening to Jesse Ed Davis play Taj Mahal. He was playing slide. He said, "Man, I dumped out all them pills, and I washed the label off the bottle." He said, "Check this out." He's got his hand still in the sling. He's going, you know, and he's just already killing it, you know. I'll still get that bottle, by the way.
Wow.
Somehow.
When Duane came here, he was on the Wilson Pickett session that we did.
There was always a slight problem when we would go out, all us white boys with a black artist, that we'd get looks, okay? But there was nothing as bad as going out with a long-haired hippie with us white boys. They couldn't stand that, right? And so both of them stayed back.
So they went on lunch break, and my brother went up to Wilson, and he said, "Man, why don't you cut Hey Jude, you know, Beatles song?"
At that point, I was mostly trying to create an original career Wilson Pickett, right? My songs.
Pickett and I in unison both said, "Look, are you crazy? We're going to cover the Beatles?" And of course, Duane said, "Exactly."
While we were gone, Duane changed their whole session.
Just remember to let out your skin.
When you get to the vamp, it goes into just an unbelievable groove.
They got the brass in there.
Duane Allman was playing such great guitar fills that something happened in that vamp. And all of a sudden, there was Southern rock. That was the beginnings of the Allman Brother Band.
He wasn't meant to be in this world for long.
J-Mo met my brother first.
Just to influence
the two of
him.
them got together.
When I met Duane, he had a cabin. He lived down on the river in Muscle Shoals. And it was like, it was a nice place down there.
In his spare time, he would do a lot of fishing. Muscle Shoals seemed to be the place for him to be at that time.
He would do sessions. I would sit over there and practice. When he would get through the session, he'd roll his amplifier over there, and the two of us would play. And then when Barry Oakley came down, boy, the three of us, I had never played music like that. But that was pretty much the base of what turned out to be the Allman Brothers Band.
Duane said, "Well, Rick, this is the kind of music that's coming in. It's going to be big again. The kids are really liking this stuff." And I said, yeah. Don't breathe on me, Duane. Back off.
See what happens when you follow your bliss.
I told Phil Walden, "I don't understand this. They're sleeping in the studio all day under quilts and things." And I wake up Duane, and he says, "Man, you know, the stars and the moon are not quite lined up right. I'm not into all that." He said, "Well, hang in there, man. Turn on the machines and let them run. And eventually you're going to make $1 billion. I said, "I can't do that. It's not me." So I missed the vote on that one.
You attract people to you that have the same polarity. Take each other to a new level.
Time, old time. Things change it, you know. I never will forget when Jimi Hendrix played behind me on Broadway. He was playing the band with King Curtis, and I told King, "I think I'm gonna steal that guitar player you got." He said, Percy Sledge, that guy there's gonna be so big in the next year or two, say, I can't keep him and you won't be able to keep him either. When Jimmy came out with his style of music, well, our style of music kind of slacked back. Time always changes organizations and things that you're doing in life.
Things happened in our world that changed everything. We decided to become entrepreneurs and become studio owners. So we had to tell Rick, who was our mentor and friend and who had gave us our chance.
We elected Roger to go break the news to him.
I had gone to LA to try to make a new deal with Capitol Records. We made a great deal and things were really exciting, and I came back and had a meeting with the Swampers.
We're supposed to come up and sign the contract and be exclusive to Rick.
Rick's office is upstairs, and we're just kind of looking at each other like, oh my God, we gotta go up those stairs.
Time for the eagles to leave the nest, man.
Up the stairs we go, knock on the door, everybody's quiet.
I began to tell them of this great new deal we'd made with Capitol.
I'm looking at them like, come on guys, help me, and they're just like.
One of the guys stopped me and said, we've already made a deal with Jerry Wexler and he is going to build us a studio across town. We'll be leaving here, going with him.
And when Roger dropped that bomb in that office, we were expecting a huge explosion.
I felt like the whole bottom of my life had fell out.
It's like we have thrown shit on his dreams.
Do you remember what he said?
He said, you're never gonna make it.
Just come hard.
It was war. Total war.
When we bought the studio, we were very nervous about whether or not we would have any hits, and you have to have hits to keep recording.
Jerry came to record at our place, and he brought Sherry in, and that was our first client. Nothing happened. It wasn't any good.
6 months went by, 7 months, almost 8 months.
I think we would have killed for the hit record.
We always wanted to own a studio, and it was like, what the hell have we done? And then all of a sudden, the English rock and roll guys started wanting to come to Muscle Shoals.
When we went to record in Muscle Shoals, it was a really lightning busy. You know, we just went in there, set up, and, you know, played our stuff for a couple of days.
The sound was in my head before I even got there. And then, of course, when that actually lives up to it and beyond, you know, then, you know, you're in rock and roll heaven, man.
You got to move. You got to move. You got to move, child. You got to move. Oh, with the Lord. Get ready. You got to move.
The first tune we did was a blues tune, You Got to Move.
We're down in Alabama, we're down in Muscle Shoals. We've got to cut some Fred McDowell stuff. If ever I'm going to do it, it's got to be here, you know. And probably soaking up the little Indian maiden too, you know.
Get ready. You got to move.
We don't come from here, but we know quite a bit about the Deep South, you know, from here.
Their producer did not show. And it wound up, I became the engineer. And I was thinking, oh man, can you believe this, you know?
Because like when they're coming out, you stop, boom. Yeah, but that's there. It doesn't come until the solo. No, I know.
But I must point something out here, that nobody was drinking and nobody was drugging.
Well, you got to move.
Except one.
I think we were drinking quite a lot. I'm sure there were lots of drinking and smoking marijuana and so on.
Well, you know, I mean, it depends on the scale of what, you know, but...
That was recording in those days. That was part of it.
But otherwise, it was a lot of serious work as well. And once we knew the room was tuned to us and we were tuned to the room, then it became, you know, right, let's get as much down to here as we possibly can, you know.
Keith had this tune, Wild Horses, but I don't think that was really finished. He had a chorus, but that was about it. So that was all written on the spot.
It was just an idea, and it had to go to the bathroom for a little while, just to sort of figure it out. And then say, okay, I'm ready, back in, and then take, you know.
His office.
Muscle Shoals studio was in this rather interesting place. Being there does inspire you to do it slightly differently. Wild Horses is a sort of country song. And I remember we used Jim Dickinson. He played tack piano.
Sin and alive. I have my freedom, but I don't have much time. Wild horses couldn't drag me away. Wild, wild horses, we are riding someday.
Charlie Watts. The epitome of the strong silent type.
I thought it was one of the easiest and rockinest sessions that we'd ever done. I don't think we've been quite so prolific ever. I mean, we cut 3-4 tracks in 2 days, and that for the Stones is going some. We left on a high with Brown Sugar, man. You know? I mean, we knew we had, you know, one of the best things we'd ever done.
The thing about Brown Sugar, it had this sound. It was quite distorted. It was really funky, you know. That was the whole idea of it.
I always wanted to go back there and cut more, you know. Then shit happened, so we ended up in France in a basement doing Exile on Main Street there. But otherwise, Exile would have probably been cut in Muscle Shoals. But politically, it wasn't possible. It wasn't allowed in the country at the time, so that was sad, you know.
Gotta look into that some more. Exile on Main Street.
Those sessions were as vital to me as any I'd ever done. I mean, all this other stuff, the Beggar's Banquet and other stuff we did. Gimme Shoulder with the Street Fighting Man and Jumping Jack Flash, you know, that I've always wondered that if we'd have cut them in Muscle Shoals, if they might not have been a little bit funkier.
Probably.
So I got this great new deal with Capitol Records, but I've had this feud with Wexler, and he's taking my musicians and going across town and going to put me out of businesses. So he says,
I imagine Rick was pissed. Hey, I got this deal, now I don't have a rhythm section.
but if Jerry thinks these are the only guys left in the world that you can cut hit records on, then he's mistaken, because I believe that I could cut hit records with any group of musicians.
He had the salt.
We began to call every
No matter
musician
what.
we knew and put them under contract.
Can rebuild
So that's why he calls me, get me up there real quick. And he said, you know a bass player? I said, I know a great bass player.
So I started playing, and he said, do you know of any other rhythm guys? I said, yeah, Freeman Brown, who became one of the best fatback drummers for Muscle Shoals. He said, and I also need a horn section. And I said, yeah, there's some guys that I met out of Nashville.
Rick Hall wanted to put a band together and call it the Fame Gang, and I ended up being part of that.
For me to surround myself with the strongest people I could made me a better producer.
Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to let him play back the tape 4 or 5 times in succession. I'm going to work with the horns. This is a sad song. No, you know, so don't jive it up too much. And take a work away from the lyrics so it sounds like a dance record.
The truth is, after Barry Beckett and Jimmy Johnson, Roger Hawkins, David Hood left and bought their own studio, we come in here with this new rhythm section, who was not really a studio band yet, but 1971, Rick Hall's producer of the year. He didn't have that with the other guys.
I started over again, and I believed I was as good as anybody.
Here's Candace Dayton to sing her big hit on Fame.
At Fame, we experienced a lot of great artists, starting with Candace
She looks
Dayton.
like a black Barbie Benton there, doesn't she?
We started to explode. The world was coming to Muscle Shoals.
You may think I'm silly to love a man twice my age, but I know from experience, girls, sometime it pays.
I did Bobby Gentry for Capitol Records. I did King Curtis. I did Lou Rawls.
Little Richard, Willie Hightower, Mac Davis, Joe Tex.
I'd rather be old man, sweetheart, than to be a young man too.
And we cut all those records on Donny Osmond, the Osmond Brothers, in 1971. I think they sold something in the neighborhood of 23 million records that 1 year.
Joe Simon, the group Alabama, Paul Anka, and Tom Jones.
Clarence Carter, Wilson Pickett, Bobby Womack.
I had one of the biggest record companies in the
just did a
world
Bobby
behind me.
Womack
I was getting
reaction a
twice
couple of weeks
the
ago
royalty
on
rate that I
Beyond
was getting
Classic
from
Rock.
Atlantic
Check
and
it out.
Chess. So I was shitting in high cotton.
I'd rather be an old man, sweetheart, than to be a young man too. Don't wanna be old.
We were forming a production company in about 69 or 70. And our friend Alan Walden found this band in Jacksonville called Lynyrd Skynyrd. I was a sucker to want to cut that band immediately. So we signed them.
When I first joined Lynyrd Skynyrd, Ronnie had always talked about the guys in Muscle Shoals. Apparently, they had gone up there and recorded an entire album with Jimmy Johnson producing.
They had no money. And I remember they would come up here and they'd check in a truck stop where they'd get in fights with the truckers because they're long hair. And basically all they had to eat was peanut butter sandwiches the whole time. But I love this band. I didn't know if it'd be a hit, but I'll tell you one thing, if you listen to those songs, some of the best rock and roll songs I've ever heard.
My very first artist of the month, Lynyrd Skynyrd. At the time, we were cutting Freebird. We took a little lunch break. We walk in, the engineer had started playing the tape. Billy Powell, who was the roadie, he was sitting in there playing this concert piano that was so unbelievable that we walked in just in like awe, with our mouth open. And I look at Ronnie, and he looks at me, and I say, I got to go and record with that. I don't know about you. And he said, you got it. We put him on the record, and then he became a band member within a few months. He was concert pianist, and nobody knew it, not anybody. The story behind the music
I think he thought they wouldn't like that.
is more interesting than the music itself
So what
sometimes.
a great thing he added to their record.
Absolutely, man.
But there was something different about this band. I mean, on this album, I had a 9-minute single, and I'm going to go and try to sell it to a record company that's never had a single over 3.5 minutes. I mean, I got problems.
How tall was
But
Ronnie
there
Van
started to be a
Zant?
lot of interest. They said, we want you to cut it down to 345 on this one. I said, nope, can't do it. And I knew that if I did that, I'd destroy the integrity of the band.
Yeah.
I said, go listen to them live, and then you'll know what to do.
Follow your bliss.
Not one A&R department would go listen to them. So it wound up, I lost the band. And here I had all these great cuts. I cut the first Freebird, Simple Man, I mean, all this stuff, you know? And I wasted almost 2 years of my life. And it's very depressing for me.
I bet.
And I'm sure it was for them.
Yeah. See how emotional he's getting with that memory?
But the Skynyrd boys had one thing in their favor going for them. That guy, Alan Walden, that I talked to you about, had got them on a Who tour, world tour with the Who. When they came off of that Who tour, they were a hit band.
Yeah. Can write their own ticket. You see all the elements stirring and swirling around what makes an act successful? It isn't just what we see from the band itself, it's all the people around it, in their zone as well, making that person successful. You know what I'm saying? The unsung heroes.
And then the crash happened. And Gary and Alan got well enough from the crash. They come to me and said, we want 11 songs of your 17 to be the next album. And it was called The First and the Last.
My father raised me. He cooked the meals. He got us off to school. I spent hours and hours in the woods with him cutting timber. He preached to me constantly. You got to be the best at whatever you do, and good is not good enough. You've got to be the best in the world, not just the best in this county. He had worked hard, and I'd worked hard with him all of our lives. And so I wanted to do something to make life easier for him, so I bought him a new John Deere tractor. He'd always wanted a tractor. We never could afford a tractor. During this time, my dad was plying on the little tractor about a quarter of a mile from our house. My stepmother went out to look for my father, and she saw the tractor wheels turned up in the air, and she knew something bad had happened. He was pinned under the tractor. He had tried to get away and had pawed in the ground, trying to free himself. Of course, after his death, I went into a deep stupor. I mean, it's just overwhelming.
Wow, Rick.
I was playing in Texas, and Rick Hall called me and told me he had a song he wanted me to come up there and do. I was born and raised down in Alabama on a farm way back up in the woods. I was so ragged that folks used to call me Patches. Papa used to tease me about it. Of course, deep down inside, he was hurt because he'd done all he could. when Rick played the song to me, I said, we're going the wrong direction.
He didn't like the song because he thought it was a downer for his people, the black people.
My papa was a great old man.
My papa was a great old man. I can see him with the shovel in his hand. Education he never had, but he did wonders when times got bad. And it was my story about me and my father.
Old life had kicked him down to the ground. When he tried to get up, life would kick him back down. One day, Papa called me to his dying bed, put his hands on my shoulder, then in tears he said, Patches, I'm depending on your son to pull the family through. My son, it's all left up to you.
Wow.
All the things went through my mind of how he killed himself, you know, working for his son, and had lived vicariously through me, thinking I couldn't make it, but maybe my son Rick can make it.
Sometimes I felt that I couldn't go on. I wanted to leave, just run away from home. But I would remember what my daddy said, with tears in his eyes on his dying bed. He said, Pat.
So I was so taken by the story that I wanted to do a special production on it with strings, and I wanted to go to LA and do it, and I did.
I was a believer in Rick Hall knowing what to do. And if he said that was a good song, okay, let's sing the song.
Patches, I'm depending on your son to pull the family through. My son.
When it came out, was gone up the charts in a hurry.
That was a #1 record.
Patches, I'm depending
Wow.
on your son. I've tried to do my best. It's time to be honest.
Rick's life is like the forging and reforging of Valerian steel.
The artists who come here, they come to get away from it all.
Let me know if you know what the hell I'm talking about.
Stay away from the telephone, hustle and bustle, and people bugging them regarding autographs or what have you. And nobody knows them here, in other words.
If I'm not making sense anymore, that's because I'm getting drunk on this shit.
People like to go to places that had a kind of magical kind of vibe about them, but they also like to get out of New York, out of LA, or out of London sometimes to do these sessions.
I know you can't tell I'm
I mean,
drunk
that's really
until
the first
I
of its kind. That attracted music people from all
until
over
I
the world.
try to
So
walk
people go to New York to record
and talk.
You know, big deal. You know, go to Muscle Shoals where you can actually get lunch at a meat and three and really experience the Southern way of life. I mean, there's nothing like it.
When I went to Muscle Shoals to record, for me, it was more like going to my village in Somerton, in Jamaica. I did actually feel I'm at home.
Sitting here in limbo, but I know it won't be long.
One of the sweetest
Jimmy
voices.
had a very definite Jamaican songwriting style, and this was pre-Bob Marley, so nobody was really hip to the Jamaican sound that much.
Here I am, going there with a different brand of feeling. They were readily adaptable to it.
When an artist would come in, what our job was to us is to become their band.
They were able to change who they were depending on the artist that walked in the door. That was the true genius of it.
I can't say what life will show me, but I know what I've seen. I can't say where life will lead me, but I know where I've been. Tried my hand at love and friendship, but all that is past and gone. This little boy is moving on.
I love his cover of I Can See Clearly
The
Now.
song Sitting in
My
Limbo
favorite song
was
of all
such
time.
a fresh piece of music that you couldn't help but notice it.
Cheers, Johnny Nash.
And so definitely the Swampers, all white guys, played their role in bringing reggae to the forefront of the public.
Sitting in limbo, limbo, limbo.
It was after those sessions that Chris Blackwell had the idea to link them up with Steve Winwood.
When we were going through our formative years, I started hearing this Southern soul music.
And of course, I didn't really have any concept of Muscle Shoals or the musicians or their background when I was first hearing this music. I just knew that the music had something very special for me.
I would love to.
So when we actually got to
sound
work with
like
them, it was an
if I was a
amazing
singer.
experience for us.
Sometimes I feel so uninspired.
Recording with Traffic was a very strange thing. It was, or to me, it was strange.
Of course, Traffic weren't a mainstream band at all. We would try and take elements of rock, jazz, folk music, all sorts of different ethnic music. Our own particular name for it was Headless Horseman music.
But don't let it get you down.
They didn't go about recording the way that we were used to. At that time, I was trying to be real precise. Traffic was the exact opposite. It sounds terrible, let's play it anyway. It might not ever sound good, but let's play it.
It wasn't an immediate, easy marriage.
But as time went on, I started, I guess you might say, opening up a little bit. I was
To that very, very annoying subscriber who keeps bugging me about Traffic. I have done some Traffic, but you gotta go looking for it on my Vimeo.
That album is sometimes I feel so uninspired.
I'll try and re-upload it on
Muscle
YouTube,
Shoals
but
did to that
probably
song
not.
was truly spectacular. They brought these rhythmic elements and harmonic elements that we could never have reached.
And then Chris Blackwell says, well, we'd like for you guys to go on the road with us. And so we go out and play with Traffic at these big venues and 20,000 people.
We were just thrilled that they agreed, but of course they'd actually never been on the road with anyone. There were times when Jim and I and Chris would get together and sort of worry, say, are we corrupting these guys' minds and that their music possibly came out of some sort of innocence? We suffered a certain amount of guilt for that.
Musicians are pretty noted for the gypsy life, moving around and playing different venue every night, but we really liked our family life.
When I first started in music, I had visions of New York and Los Angeles and travel different places, and the more I've done that, the more I've realized that this is the best place. It is my home, and I love it here. We had many opportunities to move our operation. We thought people would come to us. Why would we have to go to them when they were coming to us?
That's the magic.
Sometimes even now, when I'm feeling lonely and beat,
It's like Mecca, man. You gotta make the trip.
I drift back in time and I find my feet down on Main Street.
I'm gonna tell you, working with Bob Seger was just magnificent. It really was. He was the kind of guy that he had no ego.
Artist of
and
the
Main
month.
Street's one of my really favorite cuts. Seger really put his
Was it
heart in
March?
Most of the people in Detroit and the Muscle Shoals
2019.
people thought they were talking about the main street of their town. We had a 10-year run with him that we were at least doing half the album each
You
time
gotta
we
go to
put
my
out an album.
Vimeo. It was all blocked on YouTube. I love Bob.
The studio just started taking a life of its own. Stars fell on Alabama, and everybody who was anybody came to record at that studio.
When I think back on all the crap I learned in high school,
This was Stevenson.
it's a wonder I can think at all.
When we really got moving in the 70s, we were doing like 50 albums a year.
It was one of the best rooms I've ever worked in. The sound was like the perfect sound. It was the sound that you'd be going for everywhere else but couldn't get. And that's why it became the place where everybody
Rod
wanted to
Stewart.
record.
Oh, look at Wood. Linda.
very fortunate to get to work with a lot of the big stars, Bob Dylan, Paul Simon, Boz Scaggs, staple singers.
Rod Stewart, Joe Cocker, I mean, I can just name you a list.
Johnny Taylor,
Glenn Frey,
Leon Russell,
Willie Nelson,
Levon Hill,
Donnie Fritz,
Carlos Santana, John Prine,
Millie Jackson,
Stop already.
Harvey Greaves, J.J. Cale, Dire Straits,
J.J. Cale.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Just did a quad of JJ just 2 weeks ago.
Still amazes me today that all that music was played by us guys. A lot of the music was his.
You look back and you see the discography, we're as amazed as anybody.
What a great legacy. Great history. I love how it always goes back to Rick and his story.
My whole life has been based on a lot of it rejection. And to be honest with you, I think rejection played a big role in my life because I thrived on it. I wanted to prove the world was wrong and I was right. I was rejected by my mother. I was rejected by schoolmates because I was poverty-stricken. As I grew older, I was rejected by Atlantic Records with Jerry Wexler.
Suffered tragedies.
I don't think I've ever been more angry than I was at Jerry Wexler and the Swampers who left me at that time. It was bitter.
He's gonna rise again, watch.
But that all passes with time. Those things change.
Our respect for Rick Hall is never ending. He was our mentor. He gave all of us an opportunity that we would have never gotten without him.
We all got our start working with Rick Hall. Rick is really the founder of the music business in Muscle Shoals.
These are guys that I love with all my heart, and we had worked together for years, who wanted, like I did, to become special in the music business.
Because they've played on so many of these wonderful hit records, they will take their place in the history of American music.
That's the great thing about recording. From there on, you're immortal, because it's in the grooves, right?
Everything that everybody's done here, it came from their heart. And that's what makes Muscle Shoals so powerful.
What music built there
Heart and
is not
soul.
something that you can see with your eye. In fact, if you look at the recording studios, they were humble shells. But what they contained was an empire
An
that
essence.
crossed race and creed, ethnicity. It was revolutionary.
I'm honored to step in the place of people who I wish I could have met. You know, there's still a piece of Etta here, there's still a piece of Aretha here, there's a piece of everybody who walked through these doors.
There's a perfect storm here.
I gotta go there.
Everybody needs to know all the different nuances that went into making this thing happen and all the stars aligning and it exploding the way it did.
I'm just so proud to be from this area and to see everything that is to come out of this incredible singing river. I am honored.
Yeah, no doubt. Alicia Keys.
I'm pressing on. Yeah, I'm pressing on. And I'm pressing on to higher calling of my Lord. Can't you see that I'm pressing on? I'm pressing on. I'm pressing on to the higher calling of my Lord. Shake the dust off your feet. Hey, don't look back. Nothing gonna hold you down. There's nothing you lack. Temptation's not an easy thing. Adam gave the devil reins, and because he sinned, I got no choice. It runs in my veins, but I gotta keep pressing on. I gotta keep pressing on. I'm gonna keep pressing, pressing on to higher, higher calling of my Lord. Yeah, I gotta go higher. I gotta go higher. I'm gonna go higher to the higher calling of my Lord. I know somebody feels what I'm saying. Somebody knows what I'm going through. And don't you wanna go higher? I know you wanna keep pressing on, yeah, to the highest calling of the Lord.
Wow. Oh, gotta listen to this.
Ronnie had always talked about the guys in Muscle Shoals. And then when we wrote Sweet Home Alabama, the last verse says, Muscle Shoals has got the Swampers. And I went, Ronnie, what is that, Swampers? He goes, oh, that's Jimmy and Roger and the guys in Muscle Shoals.
Now Muscle Shoals has got the Swampers, and they've been known to pick a song too.
We were given that name by Denny Cordell, who was the producer with Leon Russell. I think he just thought it sounded good, you know, because Muscle Shoals has a lot of water here. You got to have a name. Swampers is a good nickname.
See how it all fits, how it all comes together.
There's two guitar solos in that song, one short one very long one. And they both came to me in a dream, absolutely note for note, all the transition points, the figuring, the chord voicings. I woke up out of the dream, picked up the guitar, and it was done.
See how it all fits. Essential music. So that concludes this great documentary. Muscle Shoals, such an essential part of the landscape of our musical history. Fantastic. See what I'm talking about, man? The story behind the music, the unsung heroes, the people that are unknown. Yeah, this always goes back to the life and the experiences and the forging of that Valerian steel called Rick Hall. You know, his experiences, his life, what he had to sacrifice and give in order to get back. Yes, he was following his bliss, but it definitely all came at a price, didn't it? Of course, he had great returns. Man, I'm telling you, it's the theme coming back at time and time again over the last couple of weeks in regards to my reaction. I'll talk about that a little bit. But first, I gotta stop drinking this shit. And then let's take a break, and then we'll come back and let's do a review, alright? Peace. Okay, everybody, here we are, man. We are back. What a fantastic documentary. A great story being told about a bunch of great people united by the love of music. They don't recognize color. Color is not an issue. The music is the bridge that binds them together, and it's gone forth and influenced all of us in our lives. Let me tell you, see what happens when you follow your bliss? You never know just how far it can go and how many lives it can touch and how many people it can influence, man. Let me tell you guys something. Now, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you are godly or not. I don't care if you you don't believe in God, you don't believe in faith, you don't believe in essence, you don't believe in any of that stuff. I don't care. This is my point. When you follow your bliss, you will have doors open onto you that will enable you to realize your goal. This world is built on the premise of something very, very strong, something very magnetic, something very, very present. You can call it God if you want, you can call it a consciousness, you can call it energy, you can call it whatever the hell it is, but it is fine-tuned to you. It is fine-tuned to us. And when you think of something and you apply action and you go forth and you have this goal and this vision, you know, even if you don't believe in fate or whatever the case is, pay attention, because you're going to see the road before you. It's going to open and it's going to attract to you the elements of things that will help you to acquire your goal, right? So, Muscle Shoals, the history of this is a really great example and testament to that truth. Look at Rick Hall. Look at all that he has given, all that he has sacrificed, all the things that has been taken from him, only of course to get it in droves and in return. I mentioned that his story was like the forging and reforging of Valerian steel. You know, he had a great desire. He didn't know what, but he knew why. He had a great desire to be somebody, to accomplish something great and grand. Muscle Shoals was the creation of that on a level that, according to his desire, you know, it matched his desire in the grand spectrum of things. Fantastic. Yo, man, I'm talking like this because it's been coming back to me a number of times with a couple of different reactions I've done. It's that theme for some reason that keeps coming back at me about faith, doctrine, philosophy, belief, desire, all of these things. And I'm paying attention to it. I see patterns. When I see patterns, I really, really pay attention. You know, sometimes I see patterns of warning. For example, I was not meant to see my dad for the last couple of months. I was not meant to get on a plane and go to Jamaica because I kept seeing these things warning me not to go. It's not the right time. Who knows? I could have contracted the COVID pandemic, the bug, and got sick abroad. Could you imagine me getting sick abroad? You know, so you got to pay attention to patterns, the signs, the warnings, the feels, the vibes, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? And in the same vein here, the, what am I trying to say? The vibe that created, you know, Muscle Shoals, that created this great body of music, runs along the same lines. It's the same frequency. It's the same feels, you know, or it's the same patterns and signs, depending on what you believe in. This was great. This was fantastic. All right, man. Let's do a review here. And in the review, all right, so with the review, there is a little bit from Wikipedia. And then there's another review done from RogerEbert.com, a lady named Christy Lemire. And I'll get to hers first, or get to hers after, but first, let's do Wikipedia. All right, Muscle Shoals 2013. Muscle Shoals 2013 is an American documentary film about Fame Studios and Muscle Shoals Sound Studio in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Directed by Greg Freddie Camilleri, the film was released by Magnolia Pictures on the 27th of September 2013. It features numerous recording artists as well as the staff and musicians associated with the studios. Reception. Muscle Shoals has generally received positive reviews from critics. Grady Van Sickle of Rolling Stone remarked, but the documentary's real highlights are the musings of the musicians who recorded there. Performers including Aretha Franklin, Keith Richards, Mick Jagger, she lists a whole bunch of them, reflect on what went into creating the magical environment and the legendary recordings that it spawned. I have to say that the highlight for me was Rick's story. Artists were not only prolific in Colbert County, but their recordings were often infused with a recognizable sound Camilleri describes as a funky, soulful, propulsive kind of groove. John DeFore of The Hollywood Reporter wrote, "The next must-see doc, a staple of soul fans alongside Standing in the Shadows of Motown." Film review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes reports that 97% of critics gave the film a positive review based on 69 reviews with a certified fresh rating, with an average score of 7.6 out of 10. All right, man, so that's Wikipedia. So, alongside Elaine, who sent me the link and recommended this reaction to this documentary, I also got to give a shout out and a thanks to Tom Gallup. Tom, thank you very much. Tom wrote to me, he said, Duane, I've noticed you received a number of recommendations for Muscle Shoals. When you get to it, be sure to read this review. It's by Christy Lemire. I'm subscribed to her YouTube. It's much better than Wiki. Peace. And then he says, P.S. I hope you do this from the couch. Wink smiley face. Peace. All right, Tom. Thanks, man. So Christy Lemire, September 27, 2013. And it's from RogerEbert.com. So Christy says, quote, oh, it's a long-ass review. Yo. Okay, man, let's read this shit. Yeah, we're looking at about 6 paragraphs here. Christy says, songs you've heard a million times before and think you know by heart. Lynyrd Skynyrd's Freebird, Aretha Franklin's I Never Loved a Man, the Rolling Stones' Wild Horses might just fall on your ears in an entirely fresh and new way, thanks to the documentary Muscle Shoals. First-time filmmaker Greg Freddie Camelier explores how a tiny Alabama town on the southern edge of the Tennessee River served as the source of some of the greatest American music of the 60s and 70s. At two competing recording studios, artists as varied as Percy, Sledge, and Wilson Pickett, the Rolling Stones and Traffic, Paul Simon and Jimmy Cliff discovered and honed their sounds. And in the process, the classic tunes they produced helped fortify the mythology of the Muscle Shoals sound. Sorry y'all, I'm drunk, man. Bono rhapsodizes early and often about how magical this place is, how the songs seem to come from the mud itself, full of sass and soul and grit. Although strangely, the film presents no evidence that U2 ever recorded there. Bono is just really appreciating the whole element of the place and the people that came from it. I think that's probably what it is. Probably wish that he was a part of that whole experience. Camelier buys into the hype with picturesque images of the swamps, the sunflowers, the sun setting over a forest at magic hour, like something out of a Terrence Malick movie. As lovely as these shots are, though, they do make you wonder, what is it about this unlikely rural town that produced so much great music? Is it the vibe, the history, the players, or the remoteness from pop culture hubs like New York and LA? It's all of that. Plus, it's the founder, Rick himself, Rick Hall himself, his great vision, his essence, his desire from the time he was young, all anchored and embodied into that little area, man. Camelier never tries to provide a specific answer, but rather allows us to gawk in awe at the prodigious output of the place. He exhaustively researched his film and crammed it with vivid, intimate archival footage to the point where he gets a bit too into the weeds over the split between Fame Recording Studio founder Rick Hall and the rhythm section players who were crucial to creating its greasy sound, as Franklin puts it. Those musicians, who became known as the Swampers, broke off and created their own recording studio, hence the line in Lynyrd Skynyrd's Sweet Home Alabama, "Now Muscle Shoals has got the Swampers," and they've been known to pick a song or two. What was so astonishing to so many acts visiting for the first time was the discovery that these musicians were white guys with names like Norbert and Peanut and Spooner, guys who looked like they worked in the supermarket around the corner, as Bono puts it. They mastered a signature soulful sound, heavy on drums and bass, making fans worldwide think they were listening to black R&B musicians. And while Alabama remained segregated, or at least fraught with tension in terms of race relations throughout the 60s, a sense of camaraderie prevailed within these walls that knew no color. New interviews with music superstars including Jagger, Richards, Winwood, Alicia Keys provide some insight and eye-opening anecdotes. Sledge, who grew up in the area and was working as a hospital orderly, recalls fondly how he was shaking like a leaf when he walked into the studio to record When a Man Loves a Woman in '66. The story of the origin of Freebird, a song you could probably never hear again, and that would be totally fine, also has plenty of amusing moments. Muscle Shoals feels a tad overlong and redundant after a while. Yes, it's a mythical and historical place, we get it, and it might have functioned even better as an hour-long TV doc, but with such great music coming, one hit after another, it's always a joy to watch. They just have so much to share, so much coming out of there, man. It had to be this long. Sorry, Christy, I disagree with you. It could have been 3 hours, and I would have been fine with it. But you're a critic. All right, hey. So, very good review there, Christy Lemire. So let's take a quick look at Christy Lemire here, man. I always want to prop up my fellow content creator. Christy Lemire is a co-host of the YouTube film review show What the Flick. Christy reviewed films for the Associated Press for over 14 years. You can find Christy's writings at ChristyLemire.com. She's also on Twitter at Christy Lemire and on Facebook at Facebook Christy Lemire 2. Read her answers to her movie Love Questionnaire right here below. Okay, and then there's a link. All right, so that is a spot on Christy Lemire. Good review. Nice lady, pretty lady. All right, that, y'all, concludes our look at this fantastic documentary, man. And yeah, Elaine, thank you very much. Also, Tom, thank you very much for that great review by Christy. I appreciate it very much, man. Good support from my subscribers and my patrons, definitely. So what I'm gonna do is I'll do my best. I just have a feeling that this is just not gonna make it up on YouTube. If it does, in whatever part, you know by now. If you don't know, you can go and find this on my Vimeo in full, or you can go to my Patreon. I'll probably make it public on both platforms because, you know, this definitely has great ties for both platforms. So I'll probably try and put it up on both of my YouTube platforms if it will catch at all. Even in some parts, it's definitely worthwhile. So I'll try and see. But failing that, it's on my Vimeo, and it'll be on my Patreon, and I'll make it public on my Patreon. So that, man, concludes my reaction and review of this fantastic documentary. Send more documentaries my way, man. If you feel that they will really help to educate and edify a little bit, send it my way. I'll take the time. Documentaries is something that I could sit and watch all day, trust me. So, apologies for being a little on the drunk side, slurring a little bit. This is what happens when I sit on the couch, though. And I was going to say something now, I can't remember. Yeah, so I've got reactions coming up. That's what I was going to say. I'm running a little bit behind, especially reactions for my patrons. Sorry about that, patrons. You know how it is with me, man. You know, one of these good old days. No, I can't say that shit. I was going to say one of these good old days, I'll just basically sit down and do it full time. If I was to do this shit full time, you guys would be up your ass in reaction. In one day, I could probably crank out about 4 reactions. Could you imagine getting 4 reactions from me a day? That would be too much, for sure. Between the 2 channels. Yeah, but, you know, like I said at the beginning of this, I never expected my channel to be here longer than 6 months when I first started, you know what I'm saying? But it seems to kind of be in a safe zone. Sometimes it gets blocked, and then I have alternate routes and whatnot. So, but the first 2 months of my channel, I had a copyright strike, I had community guidelines, I had all kinds of crazy ass strikes, and I thought, yeah, well, hey, you know, it's just one of those things of a livelihood fashion. Unlike other channels, I'm not ever going to rely upon this as any kind of a source of financial sustenance or rely upon it for any kind of anything at all, because it could be here one day, gone the next, but almost 3 years. Holy shit, man. But anyway, it's answering the question, hey Wayne, why don't you do this shit full time? For one, I only make a couple of $100 a month doing this, and that goes into paying for my Vimeo account and some of the other things. There's lights are always blowing and blowing out and stuff like that, so it goes into shit like that. And the other reason is that I don't have enough faith in YouTube. I don't have enough faith in this platform that I'm using, because let's face it, we're borrowing other people's intellectual property in the form of music, right? So it's just too fine a line. Even if I was making a shit ton of money, it could be here one day, gone the next. So that's why I will never count on this as a platform for that kind of thing, for financial sustenance. You know, this is just something that it's just for my own edification primarily. If it was a different channel with where I don't have to rely upon copyright material, then it's a little bit safer. And if it was making a shit ton of money, then I would say yes, that's the exception. But I will never do this on a full-time basis. Just to answer the question, I get that quite often. All right, that was it, man. I think that's it. Yeah, and I got reactions coming up. I'm a little bit behind, but I'll catch up, man. I'm gonna take a day or two off. Gotta tell you guys this shit. I do these reactions, right? And yeah, okay. Maybe I'm a little bit focused on it. No, okay, let's just say that. I gotta be careful how I say it, because friends of mine will jump on me talking about, you see, I'm right. Yeah, and friends are always demanding more of my time. Ever since you started that damn YouTube shit, you know, I never see your ass. It's always this, and this. And the only time I hear from you is when you want something. And the only time I hear from you is when, you know, I see you at work, or, you know, I get this, right? Had to kick a few girlfriends to the curb because they were just getting on my damn nerves. So, yes, there is a little bit of a time commitment. You know, there's a little bit of separating things to kind of share and stuff like that, right? So, yeah, man, you know, when you have a channel, you're a content provider, there are certain sacrifices that you have to make, but you're following your bliss. If you don't have passion for this stuff, do not ever start a YouTube channel. You hear what I'm saying? Because what is gonna get your ass out of bed at 4 in the morning to shoot reactions, especially if you're not making money? You see what I'm talking about? It's the passion for it. So that's my advice, because some people are, hey Wayne, how do I do what you do? First off, you better have a serious, genuine interest in it first. Everything else a distant second. Why? Because you will quit in 2 to 3 months, especially when people start fucking with you, especially when people start insulting you, calling you out, calling you names, all of these different sorts of things, just trying to mess with you because they're keyboard warriors, brave behind their computer screens and their phones and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get under your skin, trying to goad you into a fight, threatening you and stuff like that, threatening to do you physical harm, calling you out. Yeah, meet me downtown and let's fight it out. Shit like that. So you got to have a little bit of passion for what it is that you're doing. And it's got to be strong, because you will quit in 2 to 3 months, especially when people start messing with you, right? So this is what I say. I say, do it like this, but first ask yourself the question, why and how, and do you have a strong hide to be able to handle it? Because you have access to the world, they have access to you, and they can say anything they want to you behind their little keyboards, right? Everybody's brave behind their keyboards. I remember when I first started this shit, man, and I went to Vancouver to visit my buddy John, and one of my he was a subscriber at the time, then he became a patron. But while he was a subscriber, he said, Wayne, I'm gonna be here in this location, meet me here, right? In this case, it was Metrotown. And so I went all the way out to Metrotown to meet one of my first subscribers, one of my first, then he became a patron. And it turns out that it really wasn't him. It was somebody playing around. And one of the security guys was saying, hey, you're that Soul Train guy, right? And I said, yeah, you are a subscriber to my channel? He goes, no, but what I've been doing is I've been watching these guys, and I think that these guys want to hurt you. They've been sitting around, walking around, and I can tell by the way they move and their actions and all that stuff. And so I went to one of the girls from the Hertz Rent-A-Car, and I said, yeah, you know these guys, how long have they been here? They're like, oh yeah, they've been standing around, they've been talking, and they've been waiting for this person. Somebody was laying in wait to do me harm, right? So what I'm saying to you is this: when you want to be a content provider and you want to be a YouTube I hear about these stories sometimes about YouTube people getting attacked and all that stuff. be very, very careful, right? You got to think about all of these things before you become a content provider. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, I'm drunk and I'm going off. Sorry about all of that. So, needless to say, it's the passion that fuels me. That is why I do reactions. I keep saying it and people just don't get it, especially some of my friends. That was what I was actually trying to say. It's the passion that fuels my reaction. I'm not saying that I'm going to do it forever and ever and ever, and I'm going to have all of this time. But while you still have me, enjoy what I'm providing, enjoy my content, because I'm not going to be here doing this shit forever, right? Damn, sorry about that noise. The leaf blowers are still doing their thing. But yeah, man, and this is an answer to a couple of people who are saying, yeah, how do I do what you do? Why do you do what you do? And all of that sort of thing. So just to kind of give you a little background behind the guy and the reactor and what I've had to actually go through in the last couple of years where it comes to dealing with the public and dealing with keyboard warriors and all of that sort of thing. Lots of people out there that don't like me, but that's fine. I don't care about y'all at all. I only care about the people that do like me. People that don't, the people who are rude, the people who are assholes, that is why you're blocked. If you are blocked and you can't make comments, I blocked your ass for a reason, and I will never unblock you. Just so you know, some of you come on as other people and I can tell who you are. You've been blocked for a reason. And as soon as you become an asshole in the comment sections, you're going to be blocked again, right? That's how I roll. While I have the passion to do this, doesn't mean that I have to suffer fools, doesn't mean that I have to put up with any form of rudeness. I don't care if you're a Christian, I don't care if you're a child, I don't care if you are you're a patron and you've been with me from the very beginning. You are not entitled to talk to me any way you like. And if you talk to me in a rude way, especially if you talk to other people on my platform in a rude way, whether they're subscribers or patrons or whatever it is, don't care how long you've been with me, I will block your ass just like that. This is an exclusive little book club, as I want to put it, and I really only give a shit about my prime subscribers and my prime patrons. Those are the people who will always be there and lift me up. They come and they go, but you know who you are when I say prime. You know, the people who are new and you're visiting, welcome, all of that sort of thing. But I am here because this is an exclusive club between me and a couple of hundred people. Yes, there are 20,000 of you being subscribers, but I am really focused on my core group of people. It isn't to say that I'll not let everybody into my fold, but there's been a special relationship built between me and a certain amount of subscribers and patrons, and it's been a long-going thing mostly. Not always, you know, there's a couple of new patrons, new subscribers that I really hold dear, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? Anyway, I'm just talking now. Enough of that shit. I'm gonna bounce, y'all. Thanks very much for joining me. This was a great documentary. Thank you again, Elaine, Tom. I appreciate it very much. Send more documentaries my way. I will find the time. All right, man. There's something else I was going to say. I can't remember. But I've definitely talked enough. It's the sugar rain. It's the sugarcane rum talking. I do get a little bit of liquid courage. All right, y'all. I'm going to bounce. Have a good one. Take care. Be safe. Where are we? We're in the middle of the week. It's hump day. So have a good one. Take care. Remember your sunblock. And that's what I was going to say. The next time you see me, it'll be, aside from my complimentary quads that I'm running, falling behind on a little bit for my patrons, the next time you see me, it will be a Led Zeppelin reaction. Either Led Zeppelin 2, the album, or it'll be their bootleg. Bootleg being Blueberry Hill. Blueberry Hill. So that's going to be another affair from the couch. I won't be drinking as much, so I'm not going to be going off and talking that long. So forgive me for that. Again, like I said, I was drinking before I turned the camera on. So have a good one. Take care. And I'll catch you in either a complimentary quad or my next Zeppelin reaction. Peace out.